All right, so now that we have all this kind of nicely done, what we're going to want to start doing is really making sure that it's smoothing well and is going to deform nicely. So one thing I'd like you to try is press the 3 on your keyboard, and you will notice that everything gets smoothed. Did you see that? So all I did was I just selected it and pressed 3. So if you press 1, it'll go back to the other way, and if you press 3, it'll smooth nicely. Okay, so here we can see that it's starting to smooth just the way we want it to, and it's starting to look even better than when we just had it with 1. So I'm just going to switch back to 1 where it's very blocky, and 3 where it's doing a smoothing operation. Okay, so as you can see, we're getting some nice results already, but what we really want to do is now, okay, so we want it to sharpen in places and smooth in others. So like right here we can see that's kind of a big mushy soft edge where it may not really be like that. So this is where we get to kind of play around with control loops, and I'm going to introduce you to that concept and what it means and how to use them to your advantage. Okay, so let's go back to 1 mode, select and hit 1. Okay, and now we can see the true shape of it, right? And what we want to do is actually put in what are called control loops. So what a control loop is nothing more than this. So I've just grabbed my my edge loop tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and kind of position it kind of close to the edge. Okay, and now I'm going to hit object mode, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hit 3 again, and you'll see that it's starting to make a more controlled edge. See that? It's still a little mushy because it's stretching so far over here. So what we can do to resolve that is go back to 1, and I'm just going to add yet another control loop. Okay, and now when I smooth it, you'll see that it's starting to become a nice crisp sharp edge, right? So we've got a much better looking edge now. Then, like, if we look here where we haven't done a control loop, you can see that it's very mushy and soft, whereas this one's nice and tight and crisp. It's probably even more apparent if I turn this off. So yeah, see how here it's like mushy and soft and kind of blah, right? But up here it's nice and crisp. Okay, so that's what control loops are going to do for you. And you kind of add them as you need them. You don't add them everywhere. Some places you're going to want that nice soft curve, and in fact we're going to actually go through, once we have our control loops put in, we're going to do a little bit of that just to enforce the way we want it to curve. Okay, so but the smoothing is very nice. So yeah, so that's the smoothing tool, and we're just going to kind of continue on our path. So I'm going to hit 1, and I'm just going to come in here, and I'm just going to put a control loop. I'll put it back to wire view, and just add a control loop here, and right click, say object mode, and because I want this one to be a little softer, I'm probably not going to do 2 control loops, and I'm not sure how effective it would be anyway, honestly. Yeah, maybe I will. Let's see. So that's looking pretty good though, I have to say. So let's turn on our picture plane again and just kind of get a feeling of what it should look like. I'm just gonna go to wireframe view so I can kind of see what we've got going, and it's really starting to look very much like the original. And I think we could even say that that's probably pretty good. I'm just going to do a little finessing, and that's where we'll leave it, because this part's getting long anyway, and I think you all have the very good understanding of how we got here. So let's just go 1, and you know what, let's just go to the front view. Yeah, that's good. So here we can kind of play with some things and just, you know, tighten up our grid a little better. So let's select it, and I'm just going to right click and go vertex, and I'm just going to kind of nudge a few more little bits into position just so that it's nice and clean. So see here where it's tapering inward a little bit, we've got sort of like, this is a ridge line. So in order to foster that in our model, right now it's all super flat, and we're expecting it to kind of smooth around that. So instead of that, what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of pull a few things towards the back. Okay, so I'm just going to go back into my other view mode, and I'm going to right click and say edge, and I'm just going to select that edge and select that loop. I'm just going to drag it inward a little bit, okay, just a little bit, just to give it some sort of a shape around that top, okay. And for here, you know what, let's get rid of this control loop. So this is important. So when you delete a loop, okay, you have to hold down the control key to get rid of the points. So right now I'm just going to hit the delete button, and when I go to vertex mode, you'll see that the points are still there. So we don't really want that. That's not so good, because basically all it did was get rid of the lines that connect them, which doesn't really get rid of anything. So we don't want to do that. So I'm going to undo that, and instead I'm going to go control delete, okay? And now when I go into vertex mode, you'll see that those points have been removed as well. So always use control when you're deleting stuff, and you want the points to be removed also. Okay, so back to what we were doing. So this is a neat little trick. If you select your edge, okay, so I'm going to go into edge, and I'm just going to select the first one and then double click the second one. And what you see is that you actually get that whole connection in between, okay? So that's a nice little thing to remember. So I'm just going to go shift and double click, and I'm going to go shift, and I'm going to go shift double click, and then I'm just going to, actually didn't want that one, so I'm just going to remove it, control key to get rid of, and good. So do you see what I've got here? So I've got this whole loop kind of selected up until the one where it actually connects with the body, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And here. I'm just going to move it down a little bit. Okay, and that's going to start forming that nice soft shape around the outside. Ooh, I seem to have lost some of my selection. Let's just grab them and just move that back. And that's going to give us that nice soft shape that we were kind of wanting to get. And hopefully when we hit 3, we're going to find that it starts to really look like what we want. So I'm just going to go right click, object mode, and now when I hit 3, we should find a little more soft of a shape, which is kind of what we want. Alright, so there you have it, and we're really looking good now. Nice and soft and controlled and just the way we wanted it. Okay, so one of the things I just noticed was that in here, if we look at it from the front view, right, it's kind of a more soft entrance from the bottom up, okay? And actually this is almost a little softened inward too. So we're gonna go ahead and tackle that problem now. And I'm just gonna hit space again, and I'm gonna come back to my perspective view, and here I am. So in order to do that, it's not too hard. It's just more pixel pushing. So we're just gonna grab this guy, and we might even leave this right in this mode and just kind of bring it up and in here some, okay? And that should do it. And all I would recommend is go to one view to make sure it's not too harsh, and it is a little too harsh, so I'm actually going to smooth that out a little more, and I'm going to smooth this one inward a little more. And I don't like this too much, so let's fix that too. Let's just grab these guys and just bring them out a touch. And I think that should help us some. The other thing I want to do is I want to soften this entrance into the body. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go edge, and I'm actually going to just double click this line, and I'm going to go control delete. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this whole bottom edge, and I'm just going to suck it in. So scale, and just kind of scale it inward until it feels good. And I'm just going to look at it from the front view, and I'm just going to try to make it as evenly as possible, so that this set of, this distance from here to this one, from here to here, is sort of similar to here as it is from here to here. And I've got that basically right now, so I'm going to call that pretty good. And let's go back to our perspective view, and let's try to smooth this. So right click, object mode, select it, 3, and see how that looks. And that's really starting to feel a lot more like good, okay? So the last thing we're going to want to do is just pull that out some so that it's not all the way on the Z axis. So I'm just going to go edge, double click, and I'm just going to bring it in. Just like that. So now it's a little off that 0 point, okay? Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to start working on this thing as a combined unit. But first, what we're going to want to do is kind of clean up this area. As we can see, this is really mushing pretty badly, and that's because we don't have enough control loops. So let's go back to one mode, and let's just clean this guy up before we move onward. Okay, so how we're going to do that is add some control loops. So I'm just going to add one here, and I'm going to add one here, and maybe one more up top, and that should certainly be good enough. Alright, so let's take a look. So right click, say object mode, select it, and just hit 3. And now we can see that we're starting to get a more controlled shape in that, which is what we really wanted. Okay, so that's looking pretty good now. Let's just do a little more finessing in here. I'm just going to go back to one mode, and I'm just going to, I don't like the way these guys are kind of lining up, so I'm just going to move it up a touch so that it's a little less pointy. Great. And maybe even out a little bit. Yeah, that's feeling good. These guys, we can just right click vertex. Let's just make sure that they're well centered. They look pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Let's just leave it. Good. Right click object mode. There we go. And there we have it. Let's hit 3, make sure everything looks great, and it's looking perfect. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to merge all this together and kind of just do the last finishing touches and get off of the hilt and onto the handle. Alright, so let's do it. So the next step is going to be to get rid of all of these guys. Okay, so let's get rid of them. Select them all, and just leave the front right one. Okay, so we're just going to delete that. And we're going to go back to Edit, Duplicate Special. And I'm going to go over the X-axis, Apply, and Close. Alright, so now what we want to do is combine them together and merge all the vertices. In order to do that, we have to do 2 different steps. Okay, so the first one is going to be to combine them. So what we're going to do is we're going to select both sides, and we're going to go Mesh, Combine. Okay, that was easy. Alright. So now what we want to do is merge all these vertices, because right now if I zoom into here and I grab my vertex tool and I select one of these guys, you'll see that it's not really connected, right? As I pull this one, there's 2 vertices, they're just sitting directly on top of each other. Okay, so what we want to do is merge them all based on proximity to each other. So this way we get all of them done because we know they're all sitting on top of each other, the ones that we want to merge. So let's just select everything, and we're going to go Edit Mesh, and we're going to go Merge, okay? And we're going to grab the options for this. Okay, so the threshold is effectively the radius around the individual point that's tested, and it will check to see if another point is in that side of that radius. And if it is, it'll merge it. So we know they're all sitting right on top of each other because it's only the center point that we want to merge. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually set this to the lowest number possible, which is 0001. Okay, and we're just going to hit Apply and Close. Okay, so now what's happened is all of the vertices that were sitting on top of each other are now merged. So when I grab one, doesn't matter which one, it's going to work just the way we wanted it to, which is a merged vertice. Okay, and this is now one contiguous piece, not 2 pieces. So when we do something like an edge loop here, we'll now get it to do the whole thing. Alright, and that's perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that. That was just to show you an idea. And I'm going to go back to one mode. I'm going to go right click, Object, select it, one mode, and there I am. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to do some of this little bit of inside stuff, and we're going to clean up the middle, and we're going to call it a done day. and right click, object mode, select it, right click, edge mode, and grab our edge loop tool, and we're just gonna go ahead and, I don't know, right about here we're gonna add a control loop, and about here we're gonna add a control loop, and you know what? Yeah, that's good. So let's do that, and we're just gonna right click, edge, double click this guy, oops, double click this guy, and scale it in, and that's going to do it for us. Great. Maybe just move it out a touch, and I think we're just about done with the hilt for now. Alright, so now that we're here, what we want to do next is to kind of just clean this up, put it into its layer, and call this pretty much finished. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to turn on the sword hilt itself, so that this layer is now showing our little piece here. Okay, then we're going to go right click, we're going to go vertex, and we're just going to select all those vertexes. Okay, and we're just going to move it out until it sits comfortably inside this little shell that we've made for it. And I'm going to say right about there is good. Okay, and we're just going to look at it from the front view so that we can just make sure all these points are pulled nicely inside the body. And let's just do that really quick. So I'm actually using this little center line as my guide to make sure that it's absolutely covered. So you can do that, or you can just pull it inside until it seems comfortable to you. But what you don't want is any edges showing when you look at it from the perspective view. So let's just make sure all these guys are kind of up in there. I'm just going to bring this guy in a little more, and yeah, that should do it. This doesn't matter so much because it's all going to be kind of flat. So let's just suck that all in nicely, and let's make sure this guy's in there good. And I think that's going to do it for us. So let's take another look. Let's go to our perspective mode, and yeah, that's looking great. Alright, so we are really coming close to the end here. We're going to go ahead and go right click object mode, select the object, and we're just going to flip it over and make a duplicate. So we're going to go edit, duplicate special, select the options. We're going to go -1, 1, and 1, and hit apply. Hit close. There we have it. Let's turn on our sword blade and just take a look. And we can see that we've got a little bit of a collision right here, but we'll fix that right now. Okay, so let's do that. First of all, let's turn off that sword blade, and let's get all of this added to the sword hilt layer. So when we turn this off, we can see that only that one little piece is connected to our sword hilt layer. We really want all of these pieces to be connected to the sword hilt layer, so turn it on, select, right click, and say add selected objects. Now when you turn off the layer, it will turn off all of your pieces at the same time. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to turn on that sword blade again, and we're going to turn off the sword hilt. That's going to give us access to our actual blade uninterrupted by anything else, and we're going to go ahead and right click, go face mode, select, oops, and get all those guys as we need them. And we're just going to pull it in a little bit. We have this little issue down here, so let's go in and fix that. Just going to zoom in a bit. I'm just going to right click and go vertex, and I'm just going to grab these guys and pull them into the body of the sword hilt so that it's hidden. And there we are, and we are good to go. Alright, yeah, rock and roll. Okay, let's just add our little sphere like I said we would do. And you know what, let's add a new layer. We're going to go, so I added a new layer, I double click, I'm just going to call it sword hilt sphere, and hit save. And I'm just going to add a sphere, and I'm going to move it. Oops. Attribute editor, first tab, 0, 0, 0, put it right in the middle, And I'm just going to nudge it down until it's into place. And I'm just going to scale it until it fits nicely into my position. Just in case that's off a little bit, I want to make sure that we're actually in line with our model and not the drawing per se. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into my layers. I'm going to turn off my picture plane, zoom in nice and tight, and just take a quick look. And I think it's actually looking good. Let's take a look at it in perspective view. And oh, this is a nice feature. So if you hit F, that focuses on whatever you're looking at. So whatever see how I'm now rotating around that as my object, whereas if I select this and hit focus, or F, right, I'm focused on the sword blade. So we can just select any object, hit F, and it zooms right to it. So that's a great little feature that you might want to know about. And we are really on track here. The one thing I'd like to do is, just because I know how I want to project the textures later, I'm just going to rotate this so it's like an eyeball looking out. Alright, not the other way around. And I can see here by this line not lining up with this line that I'm not quite perfect. So let's just move it up a touch more. And that's perfect. Okay? So let's take a look again, and we are really starting to look like a beautiful sword. Alright? And let's just give ourselves a beauty shot. Wireframe mode, and we should be really looking good now.